welcome to Darvanalee Design Studio. My name's Nicole Reid. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel. But for now, we're going to get started on this cute little quick project for Mother's Day, a set of coasters. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with our coasters today. There are a few things that you're going to need today. The first and the most important thing that you're going to need is your fabric and your little squares that you're going to use for your coasters. So you're going to need to cut 8 pieces for a set of 4. You'll need 8 pieces at 4.5 inches square. You'll need 4 contrasting 2.5 inch squares, and you're also going to need for however many coasters you're doing, whether it's 2, 4 or 6, it's up to you. You will need that in either fusible foam or cotton wadding or anything that you want to put inside it. So you can also use Insulbright, and I'll link up the different products that you can use down below this video, so if you're looking for some of the stuff, if you haven't got it in your scraps. Okay, so I'm using today, I had a little bit of I came across a little bit of fusible fleece, so I'm going to use that, and that's just a polyester, so I'm going to use that in my project today. As I said, you can use anything, and it doesn't have to be fusible either. You can have the sew-in one as well. You're also going to need some Heat'n'Bond, which is going to go onto the back of your 2.5 inch squares, and they're going to sit on top of our coasters. You're going to need some pinking shears, a rotary cutter, some thread snips, an open toe foot if you have it for your sewing machine, a working sewing machine, an ironing pad and an iron, and your matching threads for your project. So today I'm using white in my bobbin and on the outside of my coaster, and on the little squares that we're going to applique on, I'm going to use this beautiful Razan orange. It's like a burnt orange, and it goes so nicely with the fabric that I'm using today. So I've already cut out my pieces for the applique, and you can see here I've cut out my 4.5 inch squares of the white fabric. So basically what you need to do now is just pause the video, cut all your products out that you need to cut out, and then we'll head over to the sewing machine and the ironing board, and I can show you what we're going to do. So those measurements again: the white fabric, which is our main part of our coaster, is 4.5 inches square. Our wadding, whatever you're using, whether wadding foam or fusible fleece, is 4.5 inches square, so they match these here, and the applique pieces are 2.5 inch. Okay, so I'm going to head off and do some cutting, and then we can get started. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the Heat'n'Bond onto the back of our little squares of our 2.5 inch squares of fabric. So basically what you do is put right sides down with the wrong side facing up, and on your Heat'n'Bond you'd notice that there is actually a smooth side and then there is a bumpy side. Okay, that bumpy side is the glue, and that's going face down. So the bumpy side down onto the wrong side of the fabric, and then we're going to grab our iron, and you just follow your manufacturer's instructions for how to adhere this, and I'm just using a medium to hot iron, and I'm just going to place that on for a couple of seconds and then lift it off, and you can see there that it's actually sticking to it. So that's on. So I'm just going to set that aside and let it cool a bit, and that'll stop it from peeling away and not actually adhering properly. And then the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of our white fabric, and we're going to put that right sides down with the wrong side facing up. We're going to get a piece of our fleece, okay, and in my case this is actually fusible on one side, and then I'm going to get a second piece of my white fabric and put it on top of that. So I'm making like a little mini quilt sandwich, and basically this is the right side of the fabric facing up. I'm just going to give that a press so the fusible fleece adheres to the bottom piece of the fabric. Give it a flip over, and you can see there that that's actually just gone together nicely. It's adhered on one side, and then this side I'm just going to put a pin to hold that in place so when I take it to the sewing machine it doesn't come apart. So we're just going to do that and leave that there. And we're going to repeat that with the rest of our, or however many coasters you're going to make. I'm making 4 today, so I'm going to repeat that. and then we'll head over to the sewing machine and we'll get started. Okay, so you can see there that I've got my 4 coasters, and now we're going to head off to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this all together. Okay, so here we are at the sewing machine and we're about ready to start sewing this quick and easy project. Basically, I have already threaded my machine up, so I'm ready to go. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on there that is normally on my machine because I'm a patchworker, so it's just constantly on my machine. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew all the way around the edge of our squares that we have with the wadding in the center, our white squares, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, starting with the needle in the down position and pivoting at each corner, and we're going to repeat that to each one. So at this point, if you haven't set your machine up yet, pause the video, quickly set up your machine with whatever thread that you're going to use, and then we can get started. So I'm leaving the pin in the center of my block because this was only, you can see here that it's not fused, but the bottom one is, okay, because it was only one side of fusible. And as I said, I'm just using my scraps today. The fabric that I'm using is the leftover from a quilt that I'd done earlier in the week, and the fusible fleece is from a project that probably a handbag or a purse that I did a couple of weeks ago. So I've just grabbed that out, and that's what we're using today. So I'm going to put my needle in the down position, and I've got my stitch length on a 2.5, which I'm going to increase that to a 2.7, and that's because I'm top stitching at the moment, and the 2.7 on this machine is a really nice top stitch. You can see it, and that's what we want to do. Even though we're using a white thread, we still want to see that nice stitching there, and I'm going to repeat it with all 4. So as we come down, we just come down about 1/4 inch and stop. And don't stress too much if your fabric moves a little bit, because we are going to use the pinking shears. This is a no-turn project too, which is great, super quick. You don't have to worry about leaving a gap or anything like that. We're just going to stitch all the way around and stopping 1/4 inch from each corner, and we pivot. I love to make these gifts for people. I just make a heap of them when I'm finished a quilt, and I put them into my gift box, and that way when a birthday comes up or something special that I need, I can just quickly go to that box, grab a set out, and then I've got a quick handmade gift. So we're coming around to where we started, and at this point I just reverse for 2 stitches and then come forward again for 2 stitches, and that's it. I trim those threads off. And as you can see, we've just stitched all the way around, and what we'll do in a minute is we'll use the pinking shears to trim that up and make it nice and even. So you can see there that we've just gone 1/4 inch all the way around. So I'll get that a little bit closer so you can see it. And you can see it's a larger stitch. It's not a small one as what I would use for piecing. It is actually a 2.7. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that with the rest of them, and then we'll start on our applique. Okay, so we've just sewn our 4 of our squares together, and now we've got our nice little quilt sandwich. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our pinking shears, and we're going to trim all the way around, and then we'll do that with all 4 of them, and then we'll be ready for the applique. So there you can see, that's all I've done, is I've just trimmed that all up, and that basically is our coaster, and now it's ready to put the applique on. So I'm going to repeat that with all 4, and I'll see you back here in just a second. Okay, so all 4 of our coasters are now, I've got their little pinked edges, and they're never going to fray again. I throw these in the wash and I don't have any problem with it fraying or anything like that. You can put a little bit of fray stop on there if you so desire, but as I said, I've never had any issue whatsoever. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our contrasting applique pieces, which are our 2.5 inch squares. We're going to find the center of our coaster, and then we're going to find the center of this square, and we're going to add them on. But first what you're going to do is we're going to actually just, on the back here, we've got our Heat'n'Bond. You just want to score that with a pin or something along those lines. Get that started, and then you can just peel that off. And you want to repeat that to all 4. So as you can see, I just use a pin very quickly, and it just brings it away. And if it's adhered properly, it will, you can see that there, it looks a little bit shiny. Okay, that's the glue, and that's going to go down onto our coaster and hold it in place for us to do our stitching. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our coaster bases, and we're going to find the middle of our coaster. Now the easiest way to do that is to fold it in half, okay, long ways, and just do a finger crease. Okay, and then repeat it the other way, and you can see there that we've got a crease, and it's given us like at the quarters of the coaster. And I repeat that, but with the right sides touching. So you can see there that I've also got a crease as well. And what we're going to do is we're just going to line those crease marks up on our coaster, and then we know that it is in the center. And at this point, I just put a pin in it, and then after we've done all 4, we'll head over to the iron and we'll secure them in place. Now we'll head over to the iron and we'll put them in place. Okay, so here we are, we're back at the ironing pad, and basically we have pinned all our little squares into place, and you can see how striking they are. They're just a cute little coaster that I like to make. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our fabric looking like this. We've creased it and found our center mark. Okay, if it looks a little bit off, you can always recrease it again and just make sure that it is in the right place. Now mine's slightly moved a little bit, but that's about right now, and then I can just hit it with the iron. Now I don't iron it, I just press it. So as if you're stamping is what you want to do, and that will adhere pretty quick. Okay, so that's on there now, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that with all 4, and then we're going to head back to the sewing machine, change our threads, and we're going to do some decorative stitch around the outside. There we go, all 4 are now on there. So let's head over to the sewing machine and sew them down. Okay, so here we are back at the sewing machine. I have changed my foot, presser foot, over to a open toe foot. You can just use your regular all-purpose foot as well. I just like to use my open toe foot when I'm using it for applique or decorative stitching, because I can actually see what's going on, and it's also got a little groove in it so I can line up the edge of the fabric that I'm appliquing on, and I just find it a lot easier. So have a play around with your different presser feet, see how you go, and do some test stitching first before you start. I've changed my thread to the orange thread now, and so basically I'm ready to start. You need to pick a decorative stitch that you want to do. I'm just doing a basic blanket stitch today. So just to make it nice and easy, I have in the past used like little asterisks or a leaf, or sometimes I've done a satin stitch around them. Just depends what I want to play with on my machine. I've got quite a few decorative stitches, so this is a really good opportunity to have a really good play with your machine, and that way you can get to know it a little bit better, because as quilters we tend to just do straight stitching and that's about it. So I'm going to get going, and you can see what I'm doing, and then you can have a play with your machine. Needle in the down position, so when I'm coming up to a corner I can just pivot and it's not going to move, and it just takes that whole having to line it up again out of the equation. So at this point I can spin. And as you can see with the Heat'n'Bond, it isn't moving, so I don't have to worry about that little square moving. I can just keep stitching it down. I've just used this machine has a lock off. If you don't have a lock off stitch for this one, for your thing, leave your threads a little bit longer and just thread them through to the back and tie them off, and that way they won't unravel on you. Okay, any scraggly little threads and whatnot, you just pick your thread snips up and get rid of those, and they'll snip off quite easily. So there you go. You can see there that it's stitched on. I'll get a little bit closer and you can see my blanket stitch there. It's a nice little stitch all the way around, and it's blending in quite nicely. So I'm going to repeat that with the remainder of my coasters, and then I'll show you when they're all finished. Okay, so there we are. Our coasters are done. So you can see that it's just a quick and easy project, a little bit of applique. You can use all your scraps that you've got there. I have actually made some before in the past with 5-inch squares, so these are just slightly bigger. So you can see there, just a little bit bigger, not too much. I just had a heap of, like 6 squares left. I only made 3 of this one, and I had a little piece of fabric left, and that way I was able to use it up. So I wouldn't go any bigger than a 5-inch square, because then you're sort of bordering onto a mug rug. But you can see there on this one too, I've put them on point so you can play around with it. And you don't have to limit yourself to squares. You can do hearts, you can do stars, you can do whatever you want. So my suggestion to you is have a bit of a play with your applique. And this is just called Raw Edge Applique for those that are wondering. And have a play around with your machine using the different decorative stitches and make yourself a heap of coasters. Okay, so that's our tutorial today. I hope you really enjoyed making these little coasters. They're a quick and easy gift to do. As I said, you don't have to worry about turning anything in, so you can whip them up in no time and you can use your scraps. So they're a great scrap busting idea. If you enjoyed this video today, give us a thumbs up down below, and as always, we love to hear from you, so please leave a comment down below and consider subscribing to our channel and hit that little bell icon beside the subscribe button, and that way you won't miss out on any future posts. My name's Nicole Reid for Darvanalee Design Studio. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.